Hello, hello. Welcome to Medieval Times. So, for this project, you guys are going to be creating an interior and an exterior shot. In the first video for this series, I went through and showed a bunch of past examples that people have come up with, gave you some guidelines for it. You've got the project description to still be able to read. There's a lot of great information in there that I recommend that you check out. There is a wide subject matter that we can use for this concept. The idea being that a character is going to be walking or heading in some kind of environment and then go into an interior, and the camera is going to cut to the next shot, which is going to be the interior shot or the character entering into the space. So for mine, I wanted to try and pick something that would be useful for you guys to get you to show off how to be able to do the details, the small little works inside of these images, as well as something that would open it up for the exterior shot to cover a wide variety of different textures, items, as well as showing how to be able to render the different materials, as well some medieval village in there. And here is what I've come up with. So I would like for this next project, my example that I'm going to do is going to be a circus wagon that pulls up to a city gate. So this is like a traveling carnival where everything is contained within a wagon. And these are my initial sketches for the interior and the exterior shot. Now, I've talked in previous videos about how sometimes that first sketch is going to end up being so small that you can't quite get enough detail in there for what you really need to be able to fully understand the shot. These two shot sequences are going to be very similar to that, where my first sketch there's just too much stuff for me to plan for my exterior shot. So I've got a very, very rough thumbnail here with some general ideas, some guide points for me to go through and try and figure out. What I want you guys to do is, start with this initial sketch, but just like you're seeing here, go in and start to build out that idea and start thinking through some of those fun little details to be able to use this environment, both the exterior and the interior, to really tell a narrative and a story, to give us an idea of who or what the interior is all about, some of the backstory. Where have they been? How has this interior evolved over time, organically, through being lived in, a lived in space? What does it look like? How are we learning about the characters and their world by the environment that they inhabit? And over here on the left-hand side, I've got some people that are entering into the circus wagon, which is this very, very rough sketch here, is entering into the city gate. So they're in kind of a line, a caravan of different people that are trying to get into the city gate. Maybe there's a big festival that's going to take place. And what does that look like? So it allows me to be able to do the stone cobble road, some castle walls. So I am doing a castle or a city walls, but I'm not doing the entire castle. I'm just doing a piece of it. I'm doing a close up like we would actually see within an animated TV show. This is one little section of a greater story that we're telling. So I'm trying to imagine what that city wall, that city gate is going to look like. And while I'm doing this very, very rough sketch, not my fully developed, thought out sketch where I'm really thinking and trying to fail fast on these different ideas, I've got my city gate. I've thought to myself, hey, it would be cool to have some flags that are showing up in there. It would be neat to be able to open up the gate and show some of what the medieval village on the inside of it actually looks like. Who are the people that are going to be behind the wagon? So I want to have some fella that's on a much smaller ride that's got a big pile of hay that he's pulling into the city. And yeah, then the main shot is showing the back of the circus wagon as it's being pulled. But within this initial sketch, right, I'm kind of defining what my elements are going to be. I have not thought out those objects enough. So later on down the line, I thought it'd be fun while I'm doing this initial sketch and my mind is wandering to have, instead of just a horse being pulled by the buggy, why not have an oxen, like one of the hairy yaks that's pulling this buggy into the city. So I went through and did some research on the hairy yaks, and I drew my hairy yak out. And then I wanted to go through and do my circus cart. So this is my first sketch of the circus cart. While we're looking at this, there's a lot of details that I've been able, it's obviously more developed than what I had in that first little tiny micro sketch, but this is the beauty of working with Photoshop, right? Because it allows me to be able to go back and push and pull some of these shapes that I'm defining into something that makes quite a bit more sense, right? So the roof is on there. It's an interesting roof. I like it, but it sort of looks it's not directly on it does not align. The perspective drawings are not correct on this wagon. So I know that I need to go back and fix that, but this is still in that well-developed exploratory stage. So when I get to my final drawing, I'm going to fix the perspective issues that are going on within this roof. I'm not going to completely um, tie myself to this sketch. There's still improvement at each one of these stages that needs to take place. And on the inside of the circus wagon, what I wanted to do was make a bunch of different kind of steps and nooks and shelves and other things that are showing off their different circus items that they might have collected along the way. So in the top right hand side, maybe they do something in there where they're throwing at a target. So we've got this really cool looking wooden target with a knife sticking out of it. I want that to be up in this area. Trying to think about what their circus sign might look like and getting into the idea of, maybe during the medieval period, not everyone is literate, not everyone's the best reader. So how could they create a sign that tells a little bit about how much it costs to be able to actually see the circus? So the idea here is that it is three, whatever the currency is for a grown person, and only one for a little child, a little baby to be able to step in there and see. And so for the character has got kind of a gestures hat on to make it seem fun for this period. And then we got some more gesture hats in there, and that'll give me some little spots of color. So the tendency within these pieces is perhaps to go through and have everything be brown and tan, but figure out ways to be able to work in shadow and light. This is a great project to play with your shadow colors. So not all shadows, if we've got tan walls, need to just be a darker tan. We can make those shadows a blue color or a purple color, and it can look really, really good. So I've got my interior. I've got my pretty well developed sketch on the interior. I'm pretty happy with that. I think it's got enough information. I got a really rough sketch on this dragon here that's going to be in a cage, a little baby dragon. You imagine it's like, you know, here, come here, pay $5 to see the amazing fire-breathing dragon. And then they actually get on the inside of the tent, and then it turns out that the dragon is just a little baby fella. And so what I wanted to do was make the dragon, as the door is starting to open up, it's cracked just a little bit here, and light is going to be pouring into the space. That's going to inform my light source. The dragon is like, oh no, not the light, it's too bright. So it's sort of lifting up its wing and covering itself so that it's sort of sneering away from the light that is entering into the space. So I had to do another drawing. I like the shape of the first one. The head is interesting to me and kind of making it cat-like with the way that it's sitting. But I wanted to, get a little bit of a gag going on in there. Most of the time, we don't really want to include characters within these shots. We don't really want to include background creatures or anything because those would be animated. That would go to like the secondary animation team, or that's a great job for the starting animators to come in and fill in some of the background details as they are shadowing the senior animators within a studio. But it's still, it's still kind of a fun story. So I'm kind of letting this one slide, but generally this stuff would be left out. You would do the concept art for it and then pass it on down the line as a concept artist, not a background environment person. That's not your job to animate a dragon in a cage or even draw the dragon in a cage since that'll be animated. You don't do that. You would, focus on designing the cage out, or hopefully your concept artist have gone through and done that thoroughly. Next up, I want to show you guys what this looks like. So, for my reference images, the images that you're going to see within the project description are all here. So these are just the general sort of talking points for the for this assignment. But what I've got here is my reference imagery that I've actually put together. Go ahead and click open, that I've actually put together for this particular project. So, oops, where are the rest of them? Open, come on, buddy. There, there. Okay. That's being a little weird. Let's try it this way. There it is. All right, cool. So here's what happens next. And again, this is just sort of giving you guys how my head works whenever I'm approaching or taking on a new assignment, something that lands on my desk for an animation studio, and I've got to come up with an environment. Even if I've drawn 100 carnival carts before in my life, I still want to go in and find reference images for these things because this is going to give me insight that I would not have otherwise had. So it's really, really helpful to go through and look at this stuff and find the different shapes. You can see that the final wagon that I'm going to be using is heavily based on this design here, but I'm modifying it in a lot of big ways to be able to suit my particular angle that I'm working with. I'm changing the proportions, I'm changing the details on this thing, and it is it's very loosely based on it. So things are going to change quite a bit, but I like the way that things are headed. I could even go in and add a little window here if I want some more lighting within my shot. I think that could look pretty nice. But yeah, so this was my first wagon. Then I'm going through and looking at a lot of other wagons. I want to get some idea of the color space and how they're rendering out the wood, how they're rendering out the various items on this. This looks pretty good to me. I like the level of detail that's happening within the wood. I like the way that they're the chunkiness and the thickness of all the wood that's going on with this. So it's not super thin. It's a little bit stylized, a little bit more sort of video gamey. Clash of Clans is the great example that comes to mind. That was a very distinctive art style when that game first arrived. Mm. The next image here for this one, um, when I'm going through and I'm shopping for images, I'm starting with my initial sketch, right? So within this initial sketch, this is letting me know what items are going to be within my shot. After that, I'm going to start loading my brain up with reference images. So I go shopping for reference images out there. And I know that I've got some visual things that I need to solve for and pre-plan for within this stage. So for example, within this illustration, I need to figure out what the time of day is going to be, what my shadows are going to look like, and how I'm going to render the city stones. So these next two images, I think maybe it's a 3D render, I don't know, but either way, I really like within the second one and the first one how they're going through and handling the shadow color. So we've got a lot of blue that's going on here. You can see just how much blue is appearing back on this city wall. And so that atmospheric perspective is really going to influence in a big way how I go through and render the inside of my city within this shot, right? So as the city goes back and it's got its lighting, I definitely want to include some of that blue that's going on within there. And then the same thing as this one pushes back and opens up, get some of the blue within it. I also like the way the shadows are being handled underneath the tunnel that this character is standing on the inside of, and then these sort of creeping shadows that are occurring. And that's oh yeah, we got two options, right? So one's a little less saturated, one is more saturated. Definitely going with the more saturated of the two. That's going to look nice. Looking at other carts, and this is again concept artists doing their thing and really planning it out. So I love all these little items that are up on top of the circus cart, all the little embellishments that are on the outside of it, the little steps. And then I also noticed while I was doing my research that there's a whole wide range of details that we can add to these cart wheels that I would have otherwise completely overlooked. I just would have made the wheels on the cart very, very boring, and we can in fact make those a lot more interesting. That's a great spot to be able to go through and add some cool details in on this. So here we've got various crates, and I'm looking at the rope design, the crepe design, how they're handling their bags and boxes. Got lots of juggling pins within a box. We've got other suitcases, a big ball. That's a good thing for them to be able to to use within their circus act. I probably want to go back and make a mental note of that to include that within my cart, within my final rendering. But yeah, we're just going through and getting a bunch of ideas. Now, this cart is fascinating because when we actually get to the interior of it, my God, it's got a little writing desk. It's got some drawers. This is like Not, this is the most cleaned out cart design on the inside I've ever seen once you actually get it in on the interior of it. And I know that I want mine to be completely packed full of things. So some of these reference images are going to work. None of them are going to be 100%, but it's a really, really nice design. Also, I'm not an expert in doing cart design, so anywhere that I can see some good thought put into the wheels and the axles, that is definitely interesting and useful information that I want to keep track of. I really thought this one was cool. Not going to match the art style that I'm using. It's a 3D render, but as far as form and function goes, really, really cool cart design. Here's another one with some good interior elements that are added to it that I thought was interesting, but not entirely useful for my piece. Thought this one had a cool shape to it. I think mostly on this one, I really like the pony. And so I'd still, with the guy who's pulling the hay, within the closer to the camera, I think I'd like his mount to feel something very similar to this fancy pony here with some really great shape language that's going on with the design of it. So that pony has not been lost. Here was another interior space, and I thought this one was kind of nice with the way that it was showing off the lighting going on inside of there. And yeah, it looks really full. We've got some carrots, some other neat little lived-in items. So please, when you're doing your own pieces, think, and you're doing your own medieval interior shot and exterior shot, think about these lived-in everyday items that need to be placed in here. So this is where I got the idea for the target within my scene while I was shopping for my images for what else could go on the inside of a circus cart. This is a beautiful rendering style. You can see how heavily they're focusing on gradients. However, if you're just getting started, I would highly recommend, because there's so many little details that we're going to be doing, that you focus on actually painting this stuff instead of individual items. This works great for gaming, but this many items without a consistent shadow base is going to become completely overwhelming. And we've still got the elements of atmospheric perspective. So here's another great reference image within my shot. I've got my city gate. It's in the shadows. We've got the grass that's growing on the ground. I thought this was cool that it's got it's denoting that there's various layers. We've got another little bit of a wall that's going on here. Some exterior buildings that have started to grow up around the exterior of the castle. This is something that I definitely want to show off, was the coat of arms on the exterior, as well as the little medieval flags that are going across. I thought this was really nice too, with the vines that are starting to grow up at the edge of the castle. So this could be a great detail to add. I thought it was fascinating that each one of these gates that I looked at as I started to do my research on the gates, that they have got doors on either side of them as well. This was super cool. This was definitely an idea for a second of, instead of having a yak, to have a dragon pulling the cart, but that just gets a little bit too fantasy for me, and it's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want this to be a study on a dragon itself. We're focusing on the environments and the buildings, so the dragon, I think, from this is where it ended up at on the interior. So I do have some more of those 3D packs that are so popular that show up on ArtStation all over the place. They are useful, right? So I really liked this one a lot. That's introducing the curved top along with the two pillars to be able to break up the space on either side of the castle wall. I thought this was really, really nice, and I want to see if I can't modify or incorporate something like this into my shot. So that's my favorite one out of that group that I'm going to be utilizing some of the stuff. And this is one of those things that, like, yeah, we know that, like, there's city walls, there's a gate for castles, but all of the details for how these spaces are broken up, I would never be able to get to this on my own without heavily using reference images. And this is where that reference stage and the research really. Here's some other examples. I think this is for a stylized dragon dungeon entrance, but at the same time, we get some really, really beautiful examples of the walls and the rocks all kind of stacked together. This is really lovely with the top portion here and how we've got the different layers of it that are coming back. I really like the stone and the wood combination that's happening within this space. And yeah, it's a really, really nice looking city wall. We've also got some ruins that are starting to occur there. Got some big lanterns on either side that are really, really nice. This is sort of cool having the little tiny window up at the top. So I can't use all of this, but there are some elements from these two, especially at the bottom, that I can incorporate into the exterior castle space. This is one that I will not be using for this project, but I thought it was cool and I want to show it off to you guys. What an illustrated painterly approach they're taking to to how they're handling the castle walls and the different stone cobbled stones, and the color scheme overall is just really, really cool with it. So there's my yak example, looking at some more stuff for what might be on the inside of a circus cart, and then looking at how, if there's any way that maybe I don't want to set this within a medieval, maybe I could do more of a desert type of cityscape, but I decided not to. And then looking for just some more quick reference examples for circus items that they might have during this period, and came up with those two. But that's my collection of reference images. So I've got a ton of reference images. My mind is really filled up with ideas for this project. And so now let's start looking at what this looks like when I assemble it. So here's my um my palette or my canvas. Once again, I've got my gray background. I've extended out with the crop tool to be able to give myself a gutter over the left-hand side so that I can see those reference images the entire time. I'd like to do this one without using the line work, even though my line drawing is so dependent on the line work. I think I can get away with doing this sans line work, and it'll look really strong and really pretty cool without it. And so you can see over here within my reference images, I'm really trying to get a sense of what the lighting's going to look like. This is the important part for me. I've still got a lot of details that I need to figure out on this city wall. So I've taken my original sketch. So this is my original sketch over here in the top left-hand side. I've got my yak, I've got my circus cart, and within this, I have cut apart this reference image and those other two reference images and pasted them all together and messed with the scale quite a bit so that my circus cart feels good within my canvas size, so that I've got a good sense of where the other cart is going to go. And I've also warped this circus cart a little bit with the so here's my circus cart. That's the layer it's on. And I've gone into Edit, Transform, Warp, to be able to push and pull that circus cart around just to try and get the perspective working a little bit closer to what it's supposed to be. There's still a lot of correction that needs to happen within this space, but that warp tool will help you expand the proportions in unique and interesting ways. Again, that's under Edit, Transform, and Warp, that you might not expect into this piece. So it'll give you some unexpected results, and it's a great discovery tool. Over here, again, these images that I've got within my gutter are there to help me think through some of the final details that I need to add to the city gate. So this stuff over here, how the shadows are going to work, what the basic lighting is going to be within this space. I want kind of a long creeping shadow going across in some kind of interesting way. And then for my cart itself, I've got some base color spaces. This is really what I'm going to be using this for, is to pull my base colors off of. And then, within this, I can either not so much this one because it's just stone, grass, and that's really about it. But this one right here for my color space can work pretty good because I've got some rosy woods that are starting to show up, some wood that's within shadow. I've got quite a few colors that are happening within the brick walls. I've got this bright yellow brick that's going on, some red brick, some white. That's way too burnt out over there. I don't like that at all. But it's giving me some color cues to start working on this piece with that look really nice. And yeah, so I've got my colors that I'm going to be using for my shadows, my base wood tones, my shadow wood colors, my shadow rock colors can all get pulled from this image. And yeah, I'm in a pretty good spot to be able to start refining the castle wall within this sketch and to fix what's going on with the roof of of the cart before I begin my final color blocking phase and start working from my middle tone and forward. And now let's have a quick look at the interior. So the interior scene that I'm doing, I'm going to be working on both of these in tandem along with one another. So as I start to go through and do my flat shading, my middle tone on the usually I start with the exterior shot and then move towards the interior shot. I'm going to do all my flat shading, finding my middle tones for all of the exterior shot. Then I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to do all of that flat shading for the middle shot. This is a great way to work if you're in a studio to start to batch the process for a group of shots within an act. Within a, you've got your first, second, and third act within movies. You've also got your different acts within a TV show as well. So you can start to batch your background work while you're at a studio, and that will speed up your process and also prevent you from getting stuck when when you can't quite make it to the end of a shot. Sometimes within, especially Netflix animated TV shows like Castlevania, you'll see a shot where it really holds on the character giving a long piece of dialogue for a long time. The character isn't animated very much. They're just moving their mouth and they've blurred out the background. Usually that's an edit from the director at the final hour, and they did not have time to be able to do a full background. And so instead, they go through and don't really animate the character, just animate the character's mouth for more exposition and blur the background out within the shot. But yeah, so that's sort of how I'm setting up this drawing that I'm going to be doing. And if you guys turn in something that looks like this on Friday for your initial setup for the scene, I think you're going to be in a pretty good spot moving forward for this piece. Remember, 1920 by 1080 is the base scale for these, and then you can expand your canvas from there. Please keep your DPI at 150 DPI. While we're painting these, it's the Goldilocks zone, not quite too big, not quite too small, and you should be pretty good and pretty set. I, this setup here, I'm going to stop this video at this point. In the next video, when you come back, I'm going to start I should have my sketch resolved and I'll be able to show the before and after. And I'd like to go in and start doing some of the flat blocking of the color. When you see me do the blocking of the color within this space, I am going to start once again from the very, very far background and then build my way forward within the shot, within the flat middle tone. And we'll see how all that stuff starts to come together. So stay tuned and thanks for checking out this first initial video here.